Give you one more sentence because we can't do lectures. We have to have a conversation. Sorry. Finish the thought. Finish the thought, but finish it swiftly. Go ahead.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that the violence that we see here in Ethiopia is a manifestation of these clashes of conflicts, clashes of vision of the future between the various groups in Ethiopia. But in terms of the allegations that has been made that there is a genocide going on against Sahara,
a different vision for Ethiopia. That is why you think there is violence happening. Tewodos, go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Femi. A few things here real quick. Number one, it is, I think it's undeniable that Amaras are being targeted by the Oromo Liberation Army. And also in Metekel by the Gumuz militias. In February, the Gumuz regional government finally admitted that senior level government officials were complicit in supporting the Gumuz militias in attacking and targeting Amaras, Agaus, and those Ethiopians that they consider as settlers, non-native to the region. And we believe the same thing is happening in the Oromia region. Tens of thousands of Amaras have been displaced from the Oromia region because they are being targeted. If you ask the victims who's targeting them,
this is a good point.
Yes.
This is a good point for me to bring in. I'm just going to show you this. This is a statement that was sent to Aljezzera, and also it was inspired by a piece that Zacharias wrote, and they responded, the Oromo Liberation Army responded. So this is the piece that you're seeing. I want to actually put it up on screen so you can see the video there of it. And then we actually spoke to them in more detail, and this is what they told the stream. Have a look, have a listen.
An independent body has to be given an access to areas alleged and always beyond ready to cooperate for investigation. Ethiopia is collapsing while the world is looking for a wrong medicine to save the country when it's too little too late. Failing to accept the reality that the cause of Ethiopia's demise today is a deliberate marginalization of the Oromo mass and distorting a century-long quest for self-determination of the Oromo nation and other oppressed nationalities in the country will result into an inevitable disintegration of those independent states. Today, neither Abiy Ahmed's deception nor international community's foul cry will save the plight of the nations of Ethiopia. Situations on the ground are far from what the world is observing on the TV screens. Things are out of control, and an unlawfully declared state of emergency in almost all parts of the country solved nothing. That is today a sign of proof that shows Ethiopia is a failed state.
Zacharias, Ethiopia is a failed state. Also, I find disturbing that nobody ever admits to any of the atrocities. Nobody admits to them. Zacharias, go ahead.
Well, I'll leave the characterizations perhaps to the legal experts and those who are more fit to comment on those things, like Awel. However, it goes without question that there's been a lack of accountability and massive failures by both the regional and the federal judicial systems to hold those who are behind some of the heinous crimes against ethnic Amharas and other populations in the area for reasons that go beyond logic. So something like 50 people, for instance, killed over the course of February and March, mostly in the Horoguduru district of Oromia. And the governor there, Mr. Bekkele Dechasa, he made no mention of the victims. He did not even issue a statement of condolences via his multiple communications pages. What it has done is systematically normalize such violence. And with the violence, with the killings of something like 50 people normalized, I mean, you can only feel pessimistic about where the country as a whole is leading. So in that sense, you can definitely point to spectacular failures by multiple parties.
So gentlemen, I am going to go to YouTube. There is so much to talk about on YouTube, and I'm going to ask you to be fast and swift and quick. All of the same words. I'm overemphasizing it because I need you to be speedy. No long debates here.
Sure.
Umar, the increasing violence in Ethiopia is linked to the political failures of the transition. Awal, thoughts? Go ahead.
I think that is precisely the point I was making earlier when I talked about contrasting visions of the future. You have the prime minister who came to power on the back of primarily the struggle of the Oromo people. And once he has consolidated power, he essentially betrayed the Oromo national question, including people who have worked so hard with him to bring about the change. And now this prime minister is trying to single-handedly impose his own personal vision of the future, and that is what is driving the violence that we're talking about.
No, I think I have to respond here. Thank you, Femi. So the Prime Minister Abiy is not trying to have a unitary form of government, as Awal is alluding to. If anything, it's vastly different. He allowed the Sidama ethnic group to vote for their own referendum.
He did not.
Have their own regional
statehood.
In addition, allow me to finish, please.
So I hear the debate. I'm moving on with more of our YouTube comments because we have so many Ethiopians who want to talk to you. And I should also say, I just want to reiterate, we invited the Ethiopian government to be part of this program. They chose not to engage with us on this occasion. Let me put this one to you, Zacharias. This is from Belata B. Thank you. Ethiopia won't go in deep ethnic conflict like we saw in Rwanda. Those vulture politicians like to see that so as to take their share of the brutally torn apart Ethiopia. So basically they're saying there's not going to be an Ethiopia like there was a Rwanda, not expecting that level of conflict. Zacharias, what an awful thing to even talk about as an Ethiopian. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's still speculation. So obviously, I wouldn't comment on that specifically. But I think the saddest part of all is the fact that it's political jostling amongst the representatives and the elites of various political factions that has led to the worsening of tensions. And yet, it's the innocent people who have no role whatsoever in that political jostling that are paying the price with their lives and with their livelihoods. Scores of ethnic Amhara farmers being slaughtered in various parts of the country. They had no role in whatever Abiy or representatives of various Amhara or Oromo organizations said in various communiques or on various platforms, and yet the colossal loss of life that they are forced to shoulder is unbearable. It's something that should scar us as a society. And yet, as a society, we're focused more on trivial bickering, and that has also prevented us from really dealing with the situation, dealing with what should be key to the conversation, the massive loss of life. So whether or not the political issues that divide Ethiopians get solved or not, it seems that we can look at a future where we'll see more instances of mass slaughter of innocent people for no good reason whatsoever. So in that sense, I guess you might be able to make some comparisons to, well, Rwanda, I guess, if that's what the commentator said.
Right. On March the 9th, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed talked to the African Union about what was happening in Ethiopia, primarily talking about the northern part of Ethiopia. I want you to see part of this statement because it's really relevant to what we're talking about right now in terms of ethnic conflicts and the problems that are happening all through Ethiopia. These are some of the issues that jumped out at us, and the idea that Prime Minister is saying that Ethiopia is still in transition. There's still a lot of work to be done. I am just wondering here, gentlemen, how do you get out of this situation where we have Amhara civilians being targeted, that there is an ongoing conflict between the Oromo Liberation Army and the government, in Tigray and the government, there is another conflict there. All of these spots where people are being killed, atrocities are happening. How do you get out of that? Teodros, thoughts?
Well, first, Femi, we must have sympathy and empathy for these victims. As Zacharias was alluding to, they're not part of this political. Political wrangling, and so that's the first thing. And make the protection of the civilians a priority. We need leadership from Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to work with the nonviolent political actors, civil society, and religious leaders to move us away from this targeted ethnic attacks against innocent people and from this ethnic division that we have in this ethnic system that pits ethnic groups against one another to a system where all Ethiopians are equal, where all Ethiopians are not second-class citizens because some Ethiopians are not second-class citizens if they live outside of their so-called ethnic regions. And that's what we have right now. And so that's really what we need is real leadership and empathy and sympathy and a plan and a vision to get us away from this ethnic-based system that has divided the Ethiopian people. And this is a system that was really forced on the Ethiopian people by the TPLF regime. The TPLF is gone. This system should go along with them.
There is a lot of support, gentlemen. Excuse me, Awal. There's a lot of support, gentlemen, for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. There's a lot of opposition to him as well. I want you to hear a voice who's pretty optimistic about how Ethiopia can get out of this. Awal, then you can comment off the back of that. Let's have a listen.
The ultimate goal of OLF and TPLF is creating chaos in Ethiopia by inflicting ethnic conflict between the two biggest ethnic groups, Amhara and Oromo. Actually, they're thinking that the best strategy to weaken Ethiopia is the weakening of the Amharas. Even though it's very difficult, if Prime Minister Abiy takes serious measures on his party officials, I'm optimistic that he will be able to retake over the situation very soon.
Optimism in this conversation. Do you have optimism, Awal? Go ahead.
No, I don't. I can tell you, Femi, that today in Ethiopia, the stench of disintegration is in the air, and it is so thick that anyone with a very basic understanding of politics in Ethiopia can actually smell it. Who today can look Tigrayans in the eye after all the atrocities, after Eritrean forces were allowed to come into Ethiopia, violate civilians, violate the honor and dignity of Tigrayan mothers and women, would look Tigrayan in the eye and say their future lies with Ethiopia. This war, like the other wars that we are talking about, was about imposing a particular vision of the future on the Ethiopian people, the kind of vision that Tedros is talking about, which is the kind of post-ethnic system. You cannot have a post-ethnic system in Ethiopia because that means return to the past. And that past was a system in which a single culture, a single language, a single religion dominated Ethiopia. And consolidating Ethiopia around an Amhara cultural core would only lead to further violence and chaos in Ethiopia. So the best way, I think, for everyone is to take stock of where we are at the moment and try to find a way forward. A national dialogue could provide a pathway towards the future, but in the final analysis, the question of what kind of society we should have in Ethiopia should be decided by the Ethiopian people, not by a prime minister and not by a single ethnic group.
And Femi, please allow me to interject real quick. First, let's all understand that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is an Oromo. So when Ewal Olo alludes to this is what Amaras want, Amaras are very proud of the diverse